Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for coming out. But more importantly, thank you so much for supporting the DeKalb School District and for providing us, as we go forward, with the input, the questions, and the hopes, as we try, as we know, not just try, as we continue to refocus, redirect, and move this district in, I think, a very positive direction. Michelle mentioned the great news at Talkaville, but we also received great news today from the DeKalb School for the Arts, of the American News and World Reports. U.S. News and World Reports rated, I was told, that school was number 2 in the nation?
Number 2 in Georgia, 75.
Number 2 in Georgia. Give us a hand. That's DeKalb. 75 in the nation. Also this afternoon, I was down at the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce, and the DeKalb Chamber, Mr. Arnie Silverman, along with CEO Earl Ellis and others, about a month ago we met at the Chamber, and the Chamber stated that they wanted to do something to support and assist the efforts of our students who are graduating this year in the class of 2013. And so 30 days later, we worked together and we raised about $125,000 that will be distributed as scholarships to deserving and needed students this year in the graduating class of 2013. I think that's phenomenal. I'm also happy to report that since my appointment in February 8th, we began to focus in a new direction. And some of the decisions that have been made that I think represents a sea change in many directions for the way we're going. One we'll take up next Tuesday at the May board meeting. And that is a policy that prohibits nepotism in hiring and promotion in the DeKalb School District. One of the great concerns I heard as I traveled around the district, north, south, east, and west, there is a perception, or in fact even a reality, among many stakeholders that hiring and promotion has been primarily influenced by relationships, by family relationships, or friendships. And one of the things I like to do is, you hear things, but as leaders, you can't just pursue every particular allegation or thought or belief as it relates to the institution you're trying to lead. So I began to do some research as it relates to nepotism in the district. After a quick search and inquiry among the central staff, I was surprised actually to find out that DeKalb does not currently have a policy prohibiting nepotism. And now we couldn't find that we have ever had one, right? So if you don't have a policy against it, it's kind of difficult to violate it. But, and even more interesting, I had the opportunity to have a conversation with a gentleman named Robert Freeman, former superintendent, right? Superintendent Freeman. I invited him back. As a matter of fact, I'm inviting back several of the former superintendents because I want to know more about the history of this institution, gain institutional knowledge, because every decision, every policy has a history associated with it. And oftentimes, the generation that have followed may not be aware, may have confused what that history was. And in the midst of the conversation with Superintendent Freeman, who was a delightful man, he said, oh, well, by the way, Thurmond, if people complain about nepotism, you tell them it's my fault, because I did it. And I said, Mr. Superintendent, you sure you really want me to tell him that? He said, absolutely. Anybody remember Mr. Freeman, you know he's a very jovial guy. But he said, no, I'm serious. And he said, let me explain how this happened. He said, when I was superintendent, it was my policy to hire family members to work in the DeKalb County School District, because I felt that having a family environment in the workplace would actually encourage productivity. I'm like, really? And then he went on to say that he was the superintendent while the civil rights suit was being administered in DeKalb County that was filed, and eventually the federal courts decided there had been histories of discrimination in hiring. And so one of the challenges he faced was that it was very difficult to locate and hire African-American teachers. So when he would scour the Southeast looking for teachers, his prime directive was to locate husband and wife teams. And then he would hire both individuals to come and work in DeKalb. And of course, when Mr. Freeman retired, he left the district, but the policy was continued. Which is why we need a nepotism policy right there in DeKalb County. So that will be voted on, and I know Mr. Marshall Orson is here. I think that's very important. The other thing we did, we had concerns raised from our teachers regarding the successful all reading program. Many in the elementary schools were frustrated primarily with how it was the decision process. Am I right? Fair enough. Not so much the program, but how it was decided to bring the program to DeKalb County, and there was a tremendous amount of resistance from teachers who felt that their opinion had not been considered in that process. So what we did, oftentimes when you find yourself in a situation like this, rather than trying to paper over problems, sometimes you just need to back up and go back to square one. And so we've surveyed all the elementary teachers and principals, and the surveys are returned, and to no surprise, the teachers who've been using it were very much opposed to it, right? But from what I understand, in order for the program really to be successful, you need to really have about an 80% buy-in initially. So I think that's a positive. The second thing as it relates to the balanced calendar, I like to tell this story because, you know, this school is really in my neighborhood. I always come up to the shopping center. I like to fish. What's the little fish place? What is it?
Supreme Fish Delight.
Supreme Fish Delight. You go there too, right?
I have one around the corner.
Yeah, I go around the corner. I mean, you got great fish. So anyway, I'm always in the neighborhood, mostly on Friday evening. But,
I want to thank you.
do you really? What's your name? I'll stop by and say hello. What's your name? Karen, I'll stop by. I haven't been in the Bayou Village, but
I'm not there at nighttime.
at night, okay. All right. I'll come looking for a good deal, right? You help me out, help the
I can't give you
superintendent.
a discount, but it's already cheap.
I don't want a discount. I end up in trouble. I'll get indicted or something like that. But anyway, I'll just come by and say hello. And I lost my thought. Oh, Balance Calendar. So anyway, we live there about 15 minutes from here. And so the day I was appointed, the next morning I went out to get the papers, and my neighbor came running across the street, named Ted. And he said, "You got to get rid of the Balance Calendar." I'm like, sure. I didn't tell him I had absolutely no idea what it was at that point, right? But he was just adamant that his wife hated it, right? Because they got 3 kids in the system. But anyway, what we decided with the board's support is to basically back up and reevaluate the balanced calendar. One of the primary driving ideas behind the balanced calendar was that it helped or supported retention of information in students. Recent studies show that there is really no discernible difference between the balanced calendar and the traditional one. So we're going to back up, give our people at the central office time to look at it, and then make a better decision going forward. So those are 3 things we've done. Now, the big issue for us, of course, in 2 weeks, maybe in 10 days or 7 days, the SACS monitoring team from SACS will be in the district. We are looking forward to their visit. We are so excited. We are prepared. We've done the work, and I am absolutely certain that what they are going to discover is that we have learned from our mistakes. One of the things I always encourage folks, learn from your mistakes, don't dwell on them. And that's very important for the DeKalb County. Learn from the mistakes we made in the past, and we have made them, but the last thing we need to do is dwell on those mistakes. so we are prepared. We have a team of about 25 people who've been working almost around the clock, getting ready. I'm excited they're going to come, and I'm absolutely certain that they're going to find a district that's righted itself and moving in the right direction. And I want to reiterate what I've said from really the first moment that I was given this opportunity to serve as the superintendent, is that we will not lose accreditation. It's not going to happen. Not in 2013, not in 2014. I was proud when Dr. Elgard came and spoke directly to the school board and to myself, and I hope you read it in the paper. He stated after that meeting that it was unlikely that the CAB would lose accreditation in this year. But that's a testament to the work of men and women in the classrooms, teachers, our principals, our support staff, and particularly those who are working every day to make that so. Now, the most important part of what I'm going to have to do beyond selling the waters, I'm so proud too that the atmosphere is beginning to change externally as it relates to the DeKalb School District. And I think any objective person will agree with me that we're in a much better place than where we were 6 or 8 weeks ago. Because when I first arrived, that was a real concern, and I think a legitimate one, is that we were on the verge of precipice of losing accreditation in the district. And the district was really, in many ways, trying to tear itself apart. During the last budget cuts, when the district cut the DeKalb budget by $85 million, which was last fiscal year, and when I talked to stakeholders, parents, teachers, it's almost as if that did not happen, but it happened. Now, of course, when it happened here in DeKalb, that was a belief that it happened as a result that we found ourselves in that position because primarily mismanagement and dysfunction. And I would be the first one to suggest that that had influence. But I also hasten to hope that you will notice that Cobb County today has a what? $80 million deficit. The city of Atlanta, if I read the internet correctly the last 24 hours, is looking at what, about a half, about 50 or whatever, $50 million deficit. Fayette County is looking, which is much smaller than us, looking at a major deficit. See, what is really driving this, and by the way, we have to do a better job of managing the money we have no matter how much it is, right?
Right.
You can't blame your condition on the state of Georgia, which has divested itself by the hundreds of millions in terms of local support for schools, or the state of the economy. As bad as it is, you can't blame them, but you have to accept the fact that that is a reality. You have to accept the fact that the DeKalb Property Digest has fallen, declined by $7 billion since the recession began. And you know, I was kind of happy when my tax bill declined, right? But when your tax bill and my property tax bill drops, that means there's less revenue for whom? Schools. Just a fact. And so those two things are really impacting not just DeKalb County, but every county, every school district in this state and across this nation. And if you look across the nation, it is worse. I noticed, I was reading a story out of Chicago. They're facing a $1.2 billion deficit. That doesn't excuse anything we do, but it does put it in context. And so right now, the big challenge for myself, but the great opportunity for myself, is that we are beginning, we have been working on developing and bringing forward the FY 2014 budget. Everything I've done up until this point has been done under the auspices of a budget that was created by the previous superintendent and the previous board. And as much as people wanted me to go in and just basically just wipe out everything in existence, right? That would have been inappropriate and irrational. What we had to do at the end of this fiscal year was to focus on making sure we ended this fiscal year without, at least with less deficit than what we started. We put in a deficit elimination plan, which is going well, and I feel comfortable that our deficit elimination plan will be much further along than anyone suspected at this point. And that's something that's very, very important. But the great opportunity is in 2014. And I knew that going in 3 or 4 months left in this fiscal year. We got 12 months. And the board, Marshall Orson and Dr. Johnson and others, last week before last, set the parameters of which they like for the administration to begin to fashion the FY14 budget. And the first thing they said, the most important thing they said, Michael to refocus resources and appropriate dollars that will, so that it can positively impact the classroom and academic achievement. That will be your imperative. That will be your driving principle for every dollar that's appropriated in 2014. Now, that's good, don't you think? I don't know that we've had a board that has publicly articulated that vision and was serious about it when it was said. Is that fair, Marshall? That's just fair, and I think that's important. So we have been, I have been going about that. Now, the reality is state mandates and increases in insurance and benefits and step increases have increased our expenditures by about $16 million. That's not a local decision. That was a decision made by the legislature and the government. So in 2014, we will have an additional $16 million in expenditures that we did not have in 2013, without any decision being made at the local level. Okay, fair enough. Mr. Barone, who's our fiscal officer, stated that in talking with local county officials at the tax assessors, they are expecting a 3% decline in the amount of revenue that will be collected through ad valorem taxation. So it's not 7, it's not 15. We're coming out of the recession. This is much better than it's been really in the last 4 years, but we're going to have less ad valorem tax revenue next year than we had this year. The good news is we'll have some slight increases in the state appropriation because we have an increase in the number of students. At the bottom line, we'll have the same amount of money roughly, but we're going to have, if nothing else changes, an increase of $16 million in expenditure. And the board says, Michael Thurmond, you go in there and write a budget, right, that emphasizes academic achievement, focus on the classroom. Even though you got less money, but, and I said, well, thank you. We have a great opportunity. What's the prayer of serenity? So, what is it? That's the gist. To know the things you can change, right, or are changeable, and accept the ones you can't. I can't change this fiscal reality, but inside of that, we have an opportunity to do something unique. One of the things that, and I really, this came to me last night. I was at Southwest DeKalb last night with a group of parents, and you know I've been around the district, and I'll stop and let you all talk, and then I'll finish up later. I finally figured out the DeKalb School District. It took me a minute, but I figured it out. Wherever I go, north, south, east, west, doesn't matter. The parents and the stakeholders who have children in a specific school or who live in a specific neighborhood love their school. They love their teacher. They love their principal. And it's been that way everywhere I go. And they believe that their school is the best doggone school anywhere in Georgia, anywhere in DeKalb, anywhere in America. Right? Now, the challenge I have is that they love their school, they love their teachers, they love their students, they love their principal, but they don't think much of care much about any other school, you know. And that's the DeKalb way. Right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I love it. Now the challenge, if you're a superintendent, is that you have to love all the students, and all the schools, and all the principals, and all the teachers, and all the parents. The way we will elevate ourselves and ascend to a level of prominence that we already deserve is that we have to understand the power of self-interest. And I always tell parents, you must be self-interested in your child's education. That's your job. That's your mission. That's your call. And in many ways, it's a divine right. You have to do that at all costs. Do it, right? But beyond that, I encourage parents, teachers, principals, school board members, stakeholders to engage in what I call a period of enlightened self-interest. Enlightened self-interest will allow you to rise above interest in your own child, your own school, your own neighborhood, and become interested in the education of other people's children. That really, my friend, is the major obstacle we have to overcome. Because think about it. How many of us were born, raised, educated, and graduated from a high school in DeKalb County? Raise your hand. It's always less than 5, it's like 5–10% every audience. So that means all the rest of us who are gathered here today owe our education to the investment of other people somewhere else. How many of us actually married a person who was born, raised, and went to the same high school we went to? There's one lucky lady. Right? So at a minimum, two lucky ladies. You have to really consider that our needs are not just our immediate needs, but they're part of a broader understanding of why we need to build a quality school district. And it transcends and goes beyond north and south, and east and west, and black folk and white folk, and Asian folk, and Hispanic folk. It's really just about our future in this county, in this state, and in the nation. And I'll take questions. And I'm a little tired tonight, so I need only easy questions. It's been a long day.
We'll give you a chair.
Do I need? Yeah, I'll take a chair. The water's good. I have backup. I have my area superintendent. Y'all give her a hand. We have other people here. What mother superintendent? Stand up straight. Stand up. We have other people. This question regarding the SPLOS facilities.
Question.
You want to go first?
Okay. Yes, sir. You can have my mic.
Should I stand also, or?
Yes, sir.
Actually, it's kind of a not long question, but with school budgets where they are, and you're trying to make them work, and the ongoing, let's call it cityhood virus in DeKalb County, I know that the Constitution forbids these new cities that they form from creating their own school districts, but if they form their own charter clusters, how will that affect DeKalb County schools and budgets?
Well, the charter cluster is not directly, because theoretically the cluster will still be a part of the DeKalb school district, so it would not affect, revenue. But I think it's a broader issue. It really is. It's a broader issue. It's almost what I was just discussing. And one of the reasons I've spent time out in the community is that we have to find common ground. And it's tough. It's difficult. The most difficult thing in the world to do is to go out and talk to people who might disagree. And humans, by design, will tend to avoid those situations. Right? We don't even like to hear things that we don't agree with. I was so interested in this study that people who tend to be conservative often, or the great majority of the time, return to what cable news station for their news. And progressives will often turn to what? MSNBC. And the folk in the middle who can't quite figure it out will go where? CNN. It's not only do we want it, but we want it told in a way that more or less agrees with our overall view of life. Now, what I encourage young people to do, my student advisory council and others, is that you need to watch all the stations sometimes. It's more important sometimes to understand what other people are thinking, right, as it is to articulate what you are thinking. Now, I'm even more troubled by 20% of the people who turn to TMZ to get the evening news. I'm really troubled by that group. There is a group that does that. So what we have to do is, you know, it's the beginning, and I understand why folks would want to create cities and school districts. I do, I get it. I really do. But the question is, what would be in the best interest of the broader group of individuals? Because even when I do that, I still have an obligation to work toward building a better district for all of us. I'm former labor commissioner. You know, if you just fundamentally, I know there are businessmen and women in this room right there. If you intend to have a successful business that generates profits 5, 10, 15 years from now, you will have workers who, that ethnic background will be from all across this great planet. This is America. This is the 21st century. One of the great aha moments for, and I was talking to the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce, they had no idea that 20% of our population speak English as a second language. They had no idea. They hadn't been to Cross Creek or any of the other schools. So we have one of the most diverse school districts in America, really, not just in Georgia. Even more diverse than Gwinnett. We had an ambassador come visit. We have refugees from all over the face of the earth, right? Pay close attention to what's happening in Syria. We could have thousands of young people at any moment in time, can't we? But this is an opportunity. It's not a detriment. It's not a stumbling block. This presents us with an opportunity if we can embrace it. If we can get beyond my school, my neighborhood, my principal. Y'all love Miss Mary. No, I mean, everybody loves it. It's something, but you know, I need 138 of them, right? And I wish I could clone her, and I put her all over the district. Then her husband would have 138 wives. But that's what we have to do, and that's the answer. And that's what I'm doing. And it's not easy. Let me tell y'all, it is not easy. But it's so important. And that's what we're going to do. Yes, sir.
Well, I guess I wasn't clear on the question. How will it affect DeKalb County school budget-wise, if you have all these kids coming out into charter schools and you start having half-empty schools?
We have to improve the non-charter schools, the non-magnet schools.
So it will affect schools budget-wise.
Well, it could if we have. Every time we increase the number of young people who are in the charter schools, it has a budget impact or potentially on the other public non-charter schools in a district, right? That's just the way it is. But let me tell you something. Do you blame parents for trying to get the kids into the charter schools?
Well, no, it's no blame. Just
what we have to do, let me tell you what we have to do. We have to improve the quality of the non-charter schools. See, that's how you solve that problem. You just do. And let me tell you what's interesting. And I got a map that we've been working on that you all will see as we go forward in the new budget. And we have this, we talk a lot about the high-performing schools, this being one of them, the high schools, the elementary schools. And we look at the theme schools, and the magnet schools, and the charter schools, north, south, and east, and west. And we look at them. And what's interesting, there are high-performing schools, high schools in the north, Dunwoody, Chapman, but there are high-performing high schools in the south. Arabian Mountain, Southwest DeKalb. What's the common characteristic of these high-performing schools in the elementary and the middle and the high school?
Parents.
Involve parents. Good PTAs. That's what, and I had a survey done with Marcia Calvin. And you look at where you got active, involved PTAs, and it could be happenstance. But then I look at performance measures, and it's the direct correlation between the active involved parents, right, and the high performing and above average school. You hear a lot, we need a board that's civil and doesn't gouge each other's eyes out and all this stuff. You know, it's so nice to come to those meetings now, right?
Yes.
But you need a superintendent who's focused and engaged and open. You need an engaged leader as your principal. You need well-qualified teachers. But every study, I spent spring break researching, studying. The individuals that had the greatest influence on the child's education achievement is not the principal or the teacher or the superintendent of the school. It's who? Parents. With all of these reform movements, that's the one part of it they seem to have marginalized or basically totally ignored. That at the end of the day, it's the parent that has the greatest influence, or the adult guardian, or the mentor, because some kids may not have a natural parent. So the next budget you see, we're going to build from that foundation. This school is an outstanding school because you got a great leader, you got great teachers. But let me tell you what else you got. You got these parents in here. Is that fair? Y'all help make it happen every day by being present, by being involved, by asking the question. That's what I told the folks at Southwood Academy. I'd rather have an angry, upset parent involved, right, than a placated parent who never shows up. You're just much better off. So one of the budget aspects is that rather than a three-legged stool of teacher, principal, student, I want a four-legged chair, parent, teacher, principal, student. It's not magic, but I'm just telling you, the facts speak for themselves. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're gonna
Hello.
okay. We're gonna start
Which one that everybody here has been?
We're gonna start with one that everybody has been talking about for months here in the Tucker cluster. It's kind of going to be new to you, so good luck with this one. Tucker High School's projected enrollment for next year, this may come as a surprise to some of you, is over 1,900 students, which is more than 200 than they have this year. Well over capacity. Will you pledge resources to ensure that affidavits at schools are legitimate? Not that they are properly filled out, but legitimate. We have a crisis level enrollment that we're facing, and we obviously need additional resources.
Let's deal with the space issue first. I have the expert here.
Hello, I'm Dan Drake. I'm the Director of Planning and SPLOST Programming. And I guess the first part of their question was specifically that, yes, Tucker High School is overcrowded and is projected to be even slightly more overcrowded next school year. And your question about the affidavits, if you want to take this or if you want me to just take a first cut at it.
Well, poor Ms. Bergson has heard us asking about this for months in your department as well, and I think that we've all been satisfied with the fact that there's been some movement and we've had conversations and she's come out and talked to us. I think the fact that the enrollment for the school next year is, I understand, almost 200 students more, possibly. This is all projected. I understand this is not for sure. Pushes us to a level where now we need to say, I think at this point, even under budget restrictions, we need to consider allocating resources beyond the schoolhouse to at least make sure that everybody that's in that school should be in that school. And not just Tucker High School, this is an issue, I guess, across the county, but we're almost reaching critical mass from my point of view at this point.
Yeah, let me give you some information. I did talk to Dr. Thompson this afternoon specifically about this question about the affidavits. And, one of the things that she says that, there's consequences for falsifying it, and that the district can review strategies to look at promoting and monitoring enrollment in schools, and we're going to be looking at that. But one of the things she did provide is some of the data. There was an audit that was done in November this past year, specifically on Tucker Middle, Tucker High, and looked at, I think it was also Middle Grove High School. And she gave a couple of results here that there are, at Tucker High School, there were 168 students in the fall that were listed as an affidavit. Of those 168, there were 51 students that their audit found they did not have a valid current affidavit or no file available to review. So that is 68% did, but 32% did not. So of those 168. And then for Tucker Middle School, they did a little bit better, where 54 of the students, there's 142 students on affidavits, and 54% of those had a current affidavit on file. So again, I think it's something we need to go back to talk to Dr. Thompson to talk about the next actions. I don't have anything more specific than that, but I think it's something that we need to continue this discussion. Does this person have anything on that besides that?
Does it not valid mean actually validated, or just what should have mentioned incomplete, or?
It's some element of incomplete. It could be they could be missing one piece of it.
But not verified.
Not 100% valid or verified.
Yeah,
Correct.
none of them are verified.
None of them are verified.
Right. They're not very much. Well, I would like to, for the sake of the superintendent, just say if you could put that on your, just have that on your radar, that there are not currently resources in the department or in the schoolhouse. And nobody wants to chase down everybody's address, and nobody wants to run anyone out that's supposed to be there. But there needs to be some sort of random system just to ensure that people are following the letter of the law, that people are in the building, should be in the building. And you know what, and I think that once the message got across, we've all discussed that you really wouldn't, you check a few people, and if you find any that are wrong, and there actually are consequences for falsifying this legal document, it may really solve a lot of the problem itself if they know we're going to actually, as a district, follow up and make sure they're supposed to be there.
May I add something to that? I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. If we had a problem at the high school where we did not have adequate resources for the students for numerous weeks after school started, things like desks, teachers. If we're projecting 1,900 students, I would hope day one we have enough teachers for 1,800. You know, that we are projecting and we have enough desks, we have enough teachers, we have enough space for these children, because no child should go 5 weeks without a teacher. And that's what we had situations like that. I might be wrong on the 5 weeks. I'm making up a number there.
It was
But
longer.
it was long?
Situations were long.
Okay.
And we
I've
felt,
heard that in other high schools.
well, we felt like we were in a better
Lakeside,
position 2 weeks ago. Ms. Brisson's been working so hard, right, and put a team together to make sure we don't face these same situations next year. But now, suddenly, this new enrollment projection maybe is a game changer. I don't know. They're going to have to decide. And I have faith that they're going to keep it at the forefront, but it really becomes more and more imperative that we are looking at every single aspect when your population is growing to that degree.
There has been one meeting so far. We have Mr. Jackson in the back, and we'll see if he wants to add any details. There is a second meeting tomorrow morning, which I will be at. I mentioned at the last parent meeting. So the 1,900 is definitely on the table as what we are trying to staff. It isn't a surprise. It was on the analysis that Mr. Drake did when we looked at how many trailers might need to go to Tucker High School in order to house the students. And so it is there. We won't be short desks like we were. I was here at the beginning of the year. Yes, ma'am, everything you said.
I wanted
correct.
him to hear. It
Yeah.
wasn't, I wasn't an argument about you, but I wanted him,
Yeah.
though I would like to know where you plan on putting trailers. But that's another topic.
It's still being considered. As I said, it's something that they're looking at.
Question that teachers on often. What is the current, the building was built for X number of students to attend. Can anyone tell us how many students are supposed to comfortably and realistically fit into that building? What it was built for?
Sure. One of the things that we've done this past spring is we've gone through and reviewed our capacity for every one of our school buildings. And we've walked through a whole process with every principal. Every principal actually had to sign off, literally sign his paper saying we look at each room and we look at the use of the room, and that will help us figure out the capacity. The capacity that we determined for Tucker High School this year, again, with the sign off, the principal was 1,655. I'm sorry, 1,654. And that's the capacity that we went through in that process.
Can I follow up on that question as well? Sure. I've been in a lot of the meetings about the redistricting that was associated with SPOS. So it's my understanding that one of the ways to deal with capacity is to redistrict. So I suspect that's coming around the corner, even though we've been told we're okay for now, we'll give you a year's warning. So if that's one of the things that's on the table for Tucker, given these new numbers, I would like to request that you start those conversations with the communities that you're considering redistricting now. So those of us who may be in, I know that Idlewood in the last go-around was being told you're going to move us to Stone Mountain. If that's going to be on the table, I would rather know now so I can put my house on the market. Because, and this is one of my questions, in the sense that a year may not be enough, and beyond that, you need to fix the schools that you want to move us to before you move us there, especially if affidavits are an issue, right? I mean, the second thing on that is in all the meetings that I've been to where we've brought up the issue of affidavits, we've been told, well, if you know it's happening, why aren't you turning it in? Well, because it's my neighbors. It's my neighbors who are signing the affidavit for the people who are zoned into a school that isn't meeting their friends' children's or families' children's needs. They wouldn't be leaving those schools if those schools were meeting their needs. So they're looking for a better situation for those children. So who am I as a parent to tell somebody in my neighborhood who's doing a good thing for a family member or a child to turn them in? What does that make me as a member of the larger community? I would urge you to fix the schools so people aren't getting those affidavits. And I want to know what you're doing to address that.
No, you reaffirmed the point I made in the very beginning, that we have to become interested and focused on improving the quality of education in schools that are not necessarily in our neighborhood. And this is, and I hadn't used it as a rationale, but this is a perfect one as to why we as a school district must begin to do what we have hesitated to do historically. Because it impacts the quality of education in your district. And you're absolutely right. The reason children, families, are seeking to get to your school is because it offers, they believe, a higher quality education. So the solution is fix the schools in their neighborhood. I mean, yes, ma'am. And I'm agreeing with you.
Do that before you rezone, so that they go home.
I haven't been in any discussion with anyone regarding rezone since I've been there. They might be having secret meetings, but there have been no discussions, and I can say that without any reservation. There have been absolutely zero discussions about redistricting.
Well, with 1,900 students, don't tell me it's not around the corner. I mean, it's math.
Well, we have to determine, I think there's our 200, and this is all part of the process that facilities has to figure out. We have to figure this out as a community. Are 200 people moving into Tucker next year? Or how many fewer are graduating? How many more are coming in? I mean, it's projections based on, I believe, last year's projections that turned out to be pretty accurate. But there's a bigger piece that I'm hoping, and I think from previous conversations, they are actually trying to identify where that growth is happening, how that growth is happening, which would either support or not support that there's an affidavit problem as well. Is that correct, Mr. Gray?
That's my question. How, there is no new building going on in Tucker, no new houses. Where are we getting projections that we're going to be at 1,900 at Tucker High School? Where are those figures coming from? Because we know what's at our elementary schools, and we know not all our elementary schools will send their kids to middle school. There's a large percentage that will send, not a large, but a certain percentage that go to private school in this area. We know that. And middle school. So where are these extra bodies? Where are we projecting? Is it the apartment complexes on Brockett? are down in Clarkston area? Where are these extra bodies coming from?
And just, I think one of the questions that I'm hearing is, you know, how do we do our process? And our process is based on past trends. So we use past trends for forecasting in the future. So what we look at is we do going down all the way down to the kindergarten level. We have no data. We don't have prior year students to understand kindergarten. So what we do is we go to the Georgia Department of Public Health. They give us their live birth data. There's a very strong correlation between the live birth data and our kindergarten enrollment. So we use that for their kindergarten enrollment. And then what we use is something that's called the cohort survival method. It's a very standard method of when you go from children in one grade in 1 year, going up to the next grade the next year. That's a cohort. And we look at how many of them, quote, survive. If it's less than 100%, then they go down. If it's greater than 100%, they go down. They go up. We do a weighted average over the past 3 years of our enrollment data to look at that. And the CAP is very complex, and we do actually one extra step. We actually do our projections down at where the children live, and because of all the school choice, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15,000 students that go to that do not attend their home school. So we have to then, we do our projections of the neighborhood, of the children that are in each grade, then we send them out to their choice schools, and we also then we know how many resident attendees will actually go to the school, and we bring kids in from the other schools. It's a very complex process that we do, and at the very end, we have the enrollment by grade for each of these schools. And we do this method, and it's, again, what has happened is that there was a large increase of the 8th to 9th last year that we're going to assume that trend continues. And there's also, I have to look at the numbers, but I would have to believe there's probably some increase in the 8th grade class as well. That's on top of that number that's looking at that.
Just based on the October 2nd census or enrollment of the schools, there are 480 8th graders moving into Tucker High next fall. There are 291 12th graders, and we assume they all graduate. And that's 189 student gain right there, without doing any of the complicated stuff that Dan just described. We just talk about 8th graders moving in and 12th graders moving out, you get a net gain of 189 students.
If that's the case with the 8th graders, I mean, if those kids get into the middle school by whatever means, hook or crook or legitimately, then are they checked out again, or once they're in that cluster, do they just move up to the high school, or what happens?
I can tell you what board policy is. Board policy requires that anytime you go into a new school in 6th grade and 9th grade, that your residency gets checked. Now that's the policy. I'm not sure if that's the practice, but again, that's the policy.
Well, and affidavits, though, are every semester, each semester?
Every year. Once a year.
So affidavits are renewed once a year.
Yes, ma'am. Well, let me recognize our board member, Mr. Mayfield. Stand up, please. Give him a hand. He came in.
Guess where I was going with this. So you're saying that the school can accommodate 1,654 students. So how many are currently attending Tucker High School?
1756.
Our last enrollment report, March 25th, showing 1655.
I feel like I understand there's a district in, district out, school choice, all of these other things, but there has to come a point, it feels like to me that we have to cap out how many students can be in one single building. We have a brand new building with beautiful, beautiful fields and whatever, we're going to stick trailers in there and stick our kids in trailers. Something about this whole thing is not correct. My kids have been there. I have a senior, I have a 9th grader, and I have a 7th grader. My senior has had a miserable 2 years with the overpopulation. They're not getting the teachers are worn out. It's a very unhappy situation. And I'm not saying, and I don't want to bring a negative thing, but there are too many testosterone-driven
young people in one building. It's not healthy. They're not getting the education that they need. They're not getting the kind of one-on-one or the right numbers in the classroom. Their classrooms are being watered down. They have children who are not disciplined at home. The sort of beginning didn't really sink in, I guess, and they come in and they disrupt classrooms, and it's just chaotic. There's a lot of chaos going on with that many students in one building. And if we're looking at 1,900 students, it's an impossible experience, and it could result in a very negative way, and I hate that, because you've got a lot of unhappy, angry students in these buildings that people don't even know their name. They've been there 4 years and people don't even know them, and they're kind of getting lost. So we have a huge problem.
I grew up here in the 70s and the 80s, and I went to Briar Lake and Shamrock because in the 70s and the 80s, the street out here at Brockett and Coolidge was zoned for Briar Lake and Shamrock. And it just shocked me, you know, when I graduated in '89, and, you know, I moved on, and I came back a few years later, and Shamrock was gone. And that was your second high school. I mean, is there like a plan? Because she's in 6th, so I've only got a couple more years, and she's going to be in that situation in an overgrown high school. Is there any plans on building a new high school? Because back then, you had Shamrock High, and now you got one school for this whole area for these high school students. And I can see it because Shamrock took a relief off of this area.
We have a question that's very similar that will follow up to that. With the high projected enrollments and overcrowded conditions, can we focus the upcoming SPLOST 5 project list on expansions that will support enrollment regardless of how recently schools were built or modified? That would affect more than just Tucker High School, and that's a short long-term solution, but it's at least a solution of adding space.
In the 6th grade, but from my understanding from one of her class teachers that this is one of the largest 6th grade classes, and she's sharing a locker. So if my child's stuff is took out of the locker, well, that's just tough, because either she can leave her bag at home and she can't even carry a heavy coat, so she's standing at the bus stop and it's 28 degrees because of all the elementaries being piled in one school. Now, you know, that's kind of sad when these kids are wearing these jogging jackets and it's, 30 degrees outside because there's no room to fit anything in their locker.
And let me ask you a question, and let me help you understand why we're in the shape that we're in. And I know Mr. Mayfield is going to smile when I see it. You all may or may not be aware, and it's been over a decade since the DeKalb School District had or implemented or even followed a strategic plan for the district. Even had one.
Had one posted for years.
I understand, but you can send a person in a room and he or she can draw it up, but I guarantee you there's no one in here who participated in the process. The questions, the concerns you raise are addressed, not now, but you have to have a plan that incorporated expectations and projections for the future. We just have not had one. That was another aha moment. We just haven't had one. One of the things in the SACS recommendations and part of the administration, what we're doing is that we will, by December 31st, have developed, inclusive of our input from all segments and stakeholders, a workable strategic plan for the DeKalb County School District that will cover the next 5 years, because they're 5-year documents. We have been operating without one. All right, that doesn't answer the problem, but I'm trying to explain why we are having the decision-making problem that we have, because we didn't have a document that allowed us to think prospectively as to building size or needs or population growth or changes in the population. Let me tell you what else I've noticed, and I'm back to this comment the lady on the right made, and it was so appropriate. Right now, DeKalb has 5 districts, right? 1, 2, and through 5. So I'm beginning now to ask this man and my other demographers and others and people outside the district to really research and look very closely at who is the customer, who are we serving, right? Of the 5 districts, only 1 district had a decline in population. That was District 5, which is in the southwest corner of the county, which has a high number of what we would call lower performing schools. Children have moved out. Because no matter, and all parents love their children, and that's an important thing, parents will do whatever they can to get their child in a place, in a location where he or she can have a chance to get a quality education. It's what you see. And unless we address the problem, there can be no solution, because if you continue this migration, you can't build a building quick enough or expand them quick enough to deal with the population. We can do things to moderate it, obviously, but the solution is to stop the in-migration. Now, the second thing that's influencing this, and you read articles about Georgia changing demographically. I read articles. This is what it looks like on the ground, folks. This is what I tell my friends on the state capitol. This is what it looks like when you have these huge, evolving demographic shifts. And it's happening quicker than the general population can imagine, right? Because it's happening in the 9th grade. If you look at our elementary schools where we have large numbers of kids who are, right now, 71% of them on free and reduced lunch, 20% of them speak English as a second language. If you look there, think 3 years middle school, think 4 or 5 years high school. But that's what a strategic plan would do for us. Now, the problem is, it's not retrospective. I can't go back and undo the decisions that should have been made that were not made. Am I right, Mr. Mayfield? And what, to his credit, and the marshal's credit, they have been 2 of the most vocal advocates, along with the chair, that we have to get a strategic plan. You just can't go down as a superintendent and make decisions on a day-by-day basis that's going to result in positive outcomes for this district 3 and 4 and 5 years from now. Then you will know how large to build buildings, right? You won't build a school here in Tucker or Southwest or Martin Luther King that you have to come back and expand upon in a very short period of time. That is evidence of lack of strategic planning. Now, all I can do is do prospective. I can't retrospect, which is the problem. But this is where we are, and that's what and I've tried to talk to parents. So, listen, this is the situation we're in. We won't get out of it tomorrow, I won't get out of it next week, but we have to begin the journey. The journey of 1,000 miles is 1 step.
I was going to add something to that.
Go ahead, you got it. And Mr. Mayfield, we love you.
Because I think in the planning part, we're sort of all new to this at a certain level, we never took into account what was happening in the surrounding communities. So, and we've had this discussion among some of the board members and the superintendent now. When Atlanta tore down all its public housing and vouchered most of its public housing population, that population was relocated into South DeKalb, Clayton County, and South Fulton County. So it's even hard when Dan is relatively new to the system in that cycle. But this system never even had a perception of what was happening outside the boundaries of the county. And you can't have really effective planning if you're not looking at what's going on around you. And I thought, you dropped in a comment, but I think it's very interesting talking about what's happening in Syria. And you think, well, what impact does that have on us? Well, we have the largest refugee resettlement population in the country is in Clarkston. So if the United States government decides that it is going to accept refugees from Syria, which is not unlikely because there's already a lot of consternation in the Middle East. If you look at what happened, the U.S. military announced it's sending 200 military advisors to Jordan to deal with Syrian refugees. You think, well, again, what does that have to do with us? It has a lot to do with this, because if the U.S. government decides it's going to relocate those refugees in all likelihood, they're coming to Clarkston, Georgia, in DeKalb County. And so we have to have a mindset in our planning that recognizes that we are not, and this is an issue that has existed in DeKalb for a long time. A very insular view that DeKalb was this goes back 30 years, if you ask me, 35 years, self-contained. It didn't really look at what happened around it. It was successful in certain respects. And it didn't worry about what was going on in the larger world. And I think we have to include in what we're doing a perspective that what happens in the city of Atlanta when it gets rid of its housing stock has a potential impact on us. What happens in Syria has a potential impact on us. There are lots of things that have to be accounted for because they are going to directly affect what happens in our greater community, particularly in our schools.
You know, I would add that, you know, and I don't want to raise expectations, but I would like to think that as we go through the strategic planning process, that we will see some hopeful moments to have some creative intervention, if you will, for acute problems like the ones that you're describing tonight. I don't know what those answers are, but I do think that just by virtue of the fact that the thinking hasn't been down this line, that a lot of creative energies that could have tapped into solutions to some of the acute problems that we're experiencing now, you know, could have been at least put on the table. You know, I'd like to think that you know, when Dan puts his mind to it, recognizing that, you know, we're going to be moving from point A to point B, but point B is actually 2 years, maybe 3 years away. But there's something that we can do in the interim, you know, that would be a creative solution to the problem. Again, not to raise expectations about what that would be, but I got to believe that something will happen in the interim before the long-term plans are able to be fulfilled.
And recognize it. And it's so important for you to what you're saying, and then having a board and leadership who accepts it and understands it and is focused on trying to address it. It's just not a short term with a district, and as I said last night, and I'm not sure the public truth, maybe you all did, we almost lost the district. Right? I mean, not lose it in a sense, but we almost lost control of the future and the direction of the DeKalb County School District. I say we, because everybody got on a piece of it, one way or another. We almost lost it. The blessing is we didn't. And I think the value is that we have seen and understood the error of our ways. And now we have an opportunity to do a much better job. It's just that, and every day I go to work, I'm telling you, it's massive. But it's doable, and I'm coming to this lady and then you, sir. Is that all right?
I don't mean a mic. I guess I'm on the other foot, a little nervous with this crowd right now, which with me, I'm never nervous about anything, okay? But I'm one of the affidavit people, and I have 2 children at Tucker Middle, but I've also worked for DeKalb County for the past 23 years. My children have been product of Brockett on up. But my concern is because of the affidavits being so difficult, in my eyes, because I guess I'm honest and I did it truthfully, is there anything that the board might look at in putting into what everything they're going over, that maybe employees of DeKalb County do have a little privilege if they're working in their feeder schools to be able to send their children where they have been part of the community. I may not live in the community, but I've been part of Brockett community for 23 years. So I'm concerned on that because I have 2 children in 8th grade moving up to Tucker, hopefully to Tucker High School if it comes to that.
Well, that issue has been raised by Marshall also, as a matter of fact, and one of the things that is being considered going forward. Going forward. Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, to follow up with what Mr. Nick was saying, and really touching on what you said earlier, and I know the parent over there, you know, you have a room full of stakeholders here. You have a room full of stakeholders here, and the worst thing for us, I mean, Mr. Thurmond, I've been in the system for 6 years and I'm exhausted. I've been through 2 redistrictings, potential school closing, blah, blah, blah. Get involved with us. Reach out to us. We're here on the ground, trying to keep that morale up, trying to, you know, scrape those pennies together, do what we can. we realize the value of what we've got. And, you know, we're open to ideas. Nothing kills the soul more than abrupt changes with little rhyme or reason behind them. It's hard to build that trust up, and I'm sure you heard all that early on, but I just want to reiterate, we're here. Let's work together. Very refreshing. Thank you.
And thank you for persevering. Give them a hand. Thank you. You know, it's been tough with all of the dissension and the confusion and the conflict going on at the time. It's just been difficult for a stakeholder to persevere. But it's different now. And I'm just not saying that it's not a Chamber of Commerce speech. You can't hear elevator music in the background. We're just moving in a different direction. But we're doing it deliberately and forthrightly and as honestly as I can possibly do it. I'm coming to you. But I thank you.
I applaud Mr. Drake, Mr. Wilkins, Ms. Brixton, because they've been not just walking the walk. These last few months, they've really been available, and we're getting that feedback.
That means a lot. At a minimum, we can get you the information and be as honest and as truthful as we possibly can. I mean, at a minimum, that doesn't cost anything. It's not a line item in the budget. It's just an issue in terms of how we're going to handle and do our business. And we can do that, and we're going to get better at it. The more we become more proficient and efficient in running this situation, running this district. Yes, ma'am, I'm coming to you.
Sorry,
That's all right. Y'all give our principal a hand, give him a hand.
Well, I just wanted to say, as you all are planning the 5-year strategic plan, to take into consideration the family dynamic that has changed in our society, not just the demographic. The fact that there are a lot of single women that run households and they would like to keep their children close to their house, to their neighborhood school, rather than having to fill out an affidavit to send their child to a school that's across, that's 5 or 10 miles away. Because this room should be filled with parents. They're not, because you have working parents that don't even work in DeKalb County, they may work in other counties, and they have to go through 285 traffic just to participate in more activities. So please take that into consideration when you're making the plans to look at the districts. If you have to keep schools small, keep them small, so you can have community involvement, so you can have parental involvement. That it's not just we're filling seats based on the numbers. If we keep small schools, we have more parental involvement, which leads to a better prepared child to prepare for the workforce.
I mean, I agree. Okay. Yeah, I need a easy one.
So we, all of us, I think you get the feeling, and you express, we all trust our principals and their staffs with our children every school day. When the bell rings, why is it necessary to have an additional layer of central office staff manage after-school programs? And there's 2 follow-ups to that, as you know.
Go ahead.
Number 1, how is the additional staff funded? Operating budget or from the after-school program itself? That could otherwise, those dollars could otherwise be spent at the school level, I would assume. In addition to the extra staff, if that's the answer, that the extra staff is funded by the after-school dollars, what are the dollars that don't return to the schools used for? So, and is there a budget that's made public of the after-school program that we can actually see where the dollars that aren't being returned to the schools are being spent by that department?
I would have to inquire as to the specifics of how the money is appropriated, how is it returned, if it's returned. I can't answer that, but I'll be happy to get the information for you. Who asked the question?
Bidwell has an after-school program. It's paid for, it pays the salaries of the staff.
Of the staff that manages the after-school program.
And the money from that program comes back to the school, but it has to be approved before it comes back to the school for use for the school.
would you be willing to look into the first part of this question, and why is it necessary to have a staff manage principals in their after-school program when we entrust them from 8:30 until the bell rings at 2:30 to manage children and their activities during the day?
What do you mean manage?
Well, the after-school program, there are restrictions on what clubs can be at the schools, how the people that are not in after-school can participate in the schools. There are additional costs associated with some of those clubs. There's, people that are in after-school can help me a little bit more with this. Yes, you can.
My child is not in after-school care, took chess for a couple of years as an after-school that we paid for to the vendor. And this year it was instituted by central office that we had to register for and pay at least the 3-day after-school care rate to take chess class for 1 hour a week. And that did not come from our school, that came from central office.
That's ridiculous.
So is that a good example?
That's a good example. And I think that's what we've had, is that there's been this mandated shift of vendors and the way they participate and how they're allowed to offer and do. In some, it's a little bit different because some schools have been operating longer in this program. And I know Mrs. Brown's going to speak to this because I think she manages it here.
I'm the director of the Rocket After School Program, working through the ASCDP. And what I think she is stating is that there is a percentage of each deposit that we do that must be sent to the central office through the ASCDP office that employs 2 people. And we are concerned that that seems to be a large percentage at that county level that is now somewhere at the county that is no longer available to the individual schools. And why must we be micromanaged? Because what we are being told is that if you want any after-school program from this point forward, it has to be done through the after-school program, and they have to be children, only children that attend the after-school program can do those after-school extra things. And the only way that somebody can do it is you have to be in it. You have to pay the after-school weekly fee in order for your child to be in chess. Or you have to pay the after-school weekly fee for your child to be in anything that a vendor comes in and does.
Someone help me historically. How was it managed prior? When was it changed? Is this a recent change?
This change, according to the vendors, has been implemented just in the past 12 months this year. We could have vendors come in and people could pay like
This year before February?
Yeah, before.
Before me, oh, okay. Before me.
Let's say that we had a chess vendor that wanted to come in. Anybody that wanted to be in chess club paid their $7 or whatever each week in order to be in that chess club, not associated with the after-school program. Now we have been told the only way we can have chess club is it must be sent through the after-school program.
I'm going to be more blunt than I'm probably supposed to be and get myself in trouble. But I've had this conversation with Michelle, and it will wait. And I've said it at the school board meeting, and I've said it to my fellow board members, that I have perceived that we have a department trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. And I've gone in a number of schools, and my kids are in the school, and I've got a kid in elementary school, and I cannot even fathom some of these changes. You know, quite frankly, these are discretionary programs for after school. So the fact that they're discretionary suggests to me that each school should be able to manage those programs as it meets the needs of their community. Now, that's not to say that I disagree that maybe a small percentage, because there's impact on the building of the money, comes back to the central office. We can
Pay for use of the building.
right. But what it's even a more pernicious problem than maybe even everybody realizes, because the money actually all goes back into the central office, and then the schools have to beg to get their money back.
Yes.
And I've gotten plenty of examples of where principals trying to do things for their school that by any objective measure were laudable things for the goal have been impeded. And so, I've shared this with the superintendent. So I'm not saying anything that if you didn't ask for it, it wouldn't show up somewhere. I cannot imagine why we have it structured this way. I understand that the central office should say, here are the rules about how you collect money and finances. Here are the rules about personnel and HR and ensuring children's safety. Those are all things I don't know that it requires a department, quite frankly. I think those can come out of existing structure, and we should allow kids who just want to do chess. And quite frankly, I know, as a parent, that some schools use that as a way to generate additional money to use in the building. And that's okay, if nobody's really complaining about it. Again, I go back to my view that we have a department in the central office trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist, and it's a problem of their own making.
Well, the only thing I caution, one thing I've learned very quickly is that let's do the research and see why the decision was made. Right? Is that fair enough?
I agree.
Yeah.
There was no vote on the decision whatsoever. There was no meeting of the directors or anything. It was just said that this is how it is going to be. So then now you're getting elementary schools with directors that are saying, you know what? I don't want to put my parents through this. I'm just not even going to offer any of those programs.
I understand. I'm not disagreeing. Let me tell you one of the things I have noticed about most of the decisions that were made over the last 12 months. That $85 million deficit had a whole lot to do with people looking for every nickel, every dime, every quarter they can find, finance the operation of the district. Now, whether they did it right or wrongly, but if you're looking for motive, that's where I would start. Because what caught my eye was we get money and it's hard to get it back. That means it's being spent on something else, right?
Exactly.
So, let me look at it. That's all I'm saying. Don't subscribe or ascribe nefarious motives to people in place now. I think, I'm just telling you, and I look at it, and I've been around the district, and this is very consistent with other concerns I've heard. All of them have something to do with money, and it happened within the last 12 months. Okay? And ultimately, more money ended up in one place where money used to, right, be situated in another. Which is why the budget process is so critical. We can't manage this system hook or crook, doing all kind of crazy things like this, trying to come up with the financing to run the district. And by the way, we've had financial issues since 2001. And we may have missed it, but the CAB's finances have been in serious state since 2001. We depleted the savings, the fund, we depleted it. Then we began to even file lawsuits expecting big verdicts. See, when people complain about the legal fees, what they don't really think about is there was an expectation somewhere that if we won this lawsuit, we would generate a $50 million windfall for the district that could finance so the fact that we're getting your dollars and quarters from your after-school program does not surprise me. Okay?
I'm just concerned with somebody telling us what we can and can't do at our school. The financial issue, that's not it, but I have a hard time turning to one of my parents and saying, I am so sorry. I know Johnny is a champion chess player, but because you're a parent that is home when Johnny gets home after school, he can't play chess.
That's a bigger issue than over the financial. I know the financial side is
And also, you had an administration, and the administration includes the school board, that focused and was very purposeful in terms of consolidating control in the central office.
This should go, with this May, after you investigate.
Yeah,
It's easy for you to put into the, I love what you said at Chairman Breakfast about empowering your principals to run their schools, trusting them, trusting your regional.
Right, and the only reason I'm not rational, I'm not trying to explain it away, I'm just trying to help. There are rational reasons why people have done things. And see, you spend 4 or 5 months, 2 or 3 months, really examining policy and decision-making inside an organization, and you find that they're very consistent on issues large and small, right? It's infuriating to you all, but I've seen it over and over and over and over again, right? It's easily addressed, but what I don't want you to do is become overly frustrated so you tune out and turn off and assume that there are people now at the district who support these ideas of even maintaining a similar philosophy. But I want you to understand how important it is who you elect and who they appoint to positions of control and influence. Right? And folks get upset with me when I say this. Whatever complaints you may have had about board members, the voters elect school board. Superintendents don't elect, voters elect. So it's very important who you elect, and it's very important to make sure who they hire possess philosophies and strategies that are consistent with things you believe. I get it. I've asked Ms. Brixton to use me a narrative. I want to understand the historical background, the chronology of the decision making. Let me understand. One more issue I can look at, right? But it's something that needs to be addressed. And we're going to get to all of them, one by one, by one, by one. And you know, it started out, as I mentioned, it was success for all, and it was the balanced calendar. This is one more issue. Given time, we can agree. I've heard it. I get it. Fair enough? I saw a hand. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Virginia Reese. I'm on the board for Smoke Rise Community Association. And I've heard you do. I've heard you do. And first of all, I just want to say that I want to give you guys a hug. I am so happy. I know this is an overwhelming job at times, and I almost feel guilty about bringing this up with all the issues, listening to the parents and the overcrowding and all the money. But cell towers in DeKalb County. I was tasked with the board to do some research on this. And I know there's not a whole lot of definitive evidence, but there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that's been coming out. And we haven't had a lot of time to figure out how these cell towers will affect small children. I know you need the money. I understand that. But I'm very concerned, I was very concerned about the expediency of how they were being placed and the lack of involvement with parents in the community, very, very little. I found out about it in Smoke Rise about 8 months after everything was going on. I'd never even heard about it. So, with everything that you have going on, I just want to say that we, and I sent you an email last week, we're very concerned about this, and at the very least, we want due diligence. We want you guys to take a step back and do the research, because these are small children. And I wouldn't want my child to be exposed to those RF rays repeatedly every day and not really know what's going on. So I'm just asking you to take a look at it, put it on your list, and I'll be calling you. Thanks.
I don't want my homeowner membership revoked. No, and let me tell you where we are with this. 2 boards ago, not this board, not the most recent board, but I think it was 2 school boards ago, the board voted to enter into this agreement to place the cell towers on what? How many schools was it? 5, 9, it was multiple schools. It was a school board decision, right? And so it lands on my desk. My bosses, previous bosses, not this board, voted to do this, right? So just from a legislative, legal perspective, the only person who can undo that would be the school board. However, there have been conversations with the DeKalb County Commissioners. I received correspondence from them. Some of the committee, Elaine, I think our commissioner, is very involved and concerned about this, and it's my understanding that the effort has stalled at this point to some extent.
I can't commit to the commissioners. I know we're trying to express. I think if you ask them in the current board, this would not be a board that would have supported this. We're also trying not to avoid getting sued, because one of the other complaints is this school system is in litigation and the drop of a hat. So trying to find a path that might address this issue of the cell towers in a way that people would be happy without violating the contract. And so the county commission, or through its planning department, has authority over the issuance of permits. And so to get to that point, you actually have to ask for the permit, which is a requirement of the contracts in there. So that is not necessarily the end all or be all, but we, I speak for myself, but I know this is circulates among us. We are very mindful of this issue. Again, I will repeat, I'm a parent. I've got an elementary school student. I would, at a personal level, not want a cell tower on my child's property, on anybody else's property. And as the mayor of Clarkston said to me, when they came to him to put it on his playgrounds, he said no, and then he used the more definitive term, and this was before they came to the school board. He said then they went right over to the school board.
So are you saying there's a contract already, that had already been signed and entered into agreement?
I can't speak definitively because I haven't seen all the contracts.
Mr. Wilkins has an answer. Mr. Wilkins?
The board entered into that contract in 2011. And so that contract process has been ongoing for several years now. And the current status is that there are no cell towers on any school properties. Thank you. Right. The contract was entered into in 2011, and there was, as I understand, several public meetings that went through a lot of the concerns that are being raised here now. So the contracting process has been going on for quite some time, and the current status is there are no cell towers on any school properties. The physical tower is not there. However, the contract is in the permitting process and is at the county level, for that part of the design and construction. So that's what the status is now. With respect to the towers, they do exist on many school properties, school districts across the country. They are on Gwinnett school campuses. So that discussion needs to be held, or that information needs to be part of your understanding of this issue as well, Mr. Superintendent.
And focus on the county commissioners.
I believe it was Burrell Ellis that actually does the final signing of the permits. Because I know that the county commissioners sent a letter to him saying they opposed it.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, every one of the county commissioners has penned a letter saying that they didn't want cell towers.
Yeah.
The initiative was, we were told by Lakeside, because the cell phone coverage wasn't good enough, and this was told by Paul Womack in a meeting which we have on video and recorded for anyone to see, and the contracts were fudged. The way it is right now, currently, we just got a contract that was supposedly signed for Lakeside, because they're the only ones who didn't have a contract because the property was donated. So here we go again. So are there permits that are out there that we're expected to wait for? Because what we understand, we get letters every day saying that there's people out there looking at, there's vacant properties, so cell towers are going up. And I encourage everyone to look at where they want to place the cell towers, because if you look at the cityhood that they're planning, and everyone likes to say that it has nothing to do with the school, it does 100%. Because where the affluent communities are, there's no cell towers, but they're placed strategically right around it, pocketed. And there's no way around it. And with the refugees, in regards to that, you notice the cityhood map, every single cityhood lights them off. So they all know they're there, and I know them personally because I see them daily. And on that, as far as funding goes, are they being divvied up throughout the county, or should we expect that our property value will continue to go down because we'll always be Title I because we live right here?
You mean the refugees?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, well, the chance is
but they're coming to Clarkston, and I think we here know that. However, and what you said, we can expect more even coming in.
Well, maybe. I don't, I hadn't talked to the State Department about Syria, but the expectation is that you have to really think that if there is another influx, the primary location, destination, is right here in DeKalb County.
So are they
from
being
anywhere in the world.
We have.
Sir?
Are we being reimbursed for that? Because I haven't seen these line documents that say federal funding is helping us to support the refugees or transport their school back and forth, thousands of buses that we have, tear up our roads. Is that part of it?
Well, there is additional funding if you have a student who speaks English as a second language. There's an additional FTE count.
We cut translators too, so that's kind of bizarre.
That was not a good move. That was not smart.
Mr. Thurmond, my concern about those kids is greater than are they coming to Tucker High School. And I say that because we got students in the 9th grade that are 18, 19 years old. We got students in the 9th grade that are 20 years old that's married. We got some with kids. And it's kind of unfair to put that kid in that situation. It's also unfair to put that school in that situation, because this is what happens. A couple things happen. Number one, you put a kid in that situation, they get frustrated because they can't master the content. They're 19 years old and they can get a job. So guess what they do? They drop out of school. That rate reflects back to the high school. So people in this community look at it and say, oh, y'all got a low grad rate and your test scores are low. Well, we know why the test scores are low. So we're putting those kids in a situation where they can't be successful. So as a school district, my thing is we got to get those kids somewhere where they can be successful. I think sometimes we look at what's going on, we forget to focus on why are we really here. Really help people and help them have a better life. And those kids are good kids, they're sweet kids. They deserve more than just being stuck in the 9th grade at age 19, 20 years old. And then we can't do anything but watch them drop out. So as a school system district, I don't know what we call it now, we got to come to grips and understand we got a problem with these kids. I don't care what school they go to, Tucker, Carson, Lakeside, whatever, we got to help these kids be successful.
Absolutely. And that's the principle of the year speaking. Y'all give me a hand. Great news though. On Monday, I'll be in Rockdale County at the Rockdale Career Camp. Right? I met with Mr. Ron Jackson, who's the commissioner of the Department of Technical and Adult Education. I met with President Jabari Samama, who's president of DeKalb Piedmont College, right? We have been offered the opportunity to apply for a $3 million grant to set up a career academy in DeKalb County. And why it's so profound. 20% of our graduates, our brilliant, outstanding graduates, 20% will apply to go to a 4-year college. And that's national. 20%. A smaller percentage will ever graduate from a 4-year college. We have to create more pathways to success for our young people. Right? And I'm putting on my labor commission hat. And there was an article today. Certificates and skills are becoming just as important as degrees in the 21st century. Right? One of the lasting legacies I hope and I intend to create is to create a career academy for this county. So that young people that you just described, or even young people in general, who are not necessarily interested in a 4-year college, liberal arts college, will have the opportunity to pursue other career goals and objectives. And one of the things I can tell you that always surprises me, many of the technical skill sets actually pay higher salaries than most 4-year college degrees. What we have to recognize as stakeholders and parents and that you know, and everybody won't, you know, go to Georgia Tech or Spelman or Morehouse or whatever, but only a relatively small percentage of our students are actually choosing initially that path. Yes, ma'am.
The state of Georgia has eliminated the technical high school diploma, so that the only option high school students have is the college prep curriculum. How can you have a technical school when the state of Georgia is saying every child should be college prep? College and career ready.
It's college and career ready. It's the Common Core.
But
college.
there still is no technical high school diploma, which used to be the career ready diploma.
Right, but the curriculum now that's being introduced is acknowledging, and we often say college, but the most important part is college and career. That's an acknowledgement by the State Department of Education and state, 45 states all across the nation, that we have to create a more diverse set of opportunities for our young people. Let me tell you another thing that's going to change next year in DeKalb County. Right now, there are dual enrollment opportunities where students in the DeKalb School District can be dually enrolled in the local technical college, right? We have 60 in the entire district.
Wow.
This school year, And Clarkson High School is directly across the street from.
Well, I think that's the counselors. A lot of that is the counselors educating the kids.
But it's
And the
counselors.
parents, and the parents, educating the parents.
It's all of us, right? But that's okay, that's the past. We're moving in a new direction. We will have more dually enrolled students in FY14. I can promise you that. So, and that's about building a strategic plan to recognize that in the 21st century, listen, the young folk, the high-tech folk, right, is not just 4 years at a liberal arts institute. And that's what the principal is talking about. Many of our kids drop out because they're bored. If I'm not interested in going to the college prep, then why am I here?
I don't care about Romeo and Juliet.
I don't care, that's what he's telling me.
The question is, are we going to allow this for younger kids, for ninth graders? Because my understanding is,
Yes.
kids drop out in ninth grade. As soon as they hit 16, then they can drop out.
Actually, they're dropping out in 7th and 8th. Mentally, they're dropping out.
And look at the health and allied health industry. You know, 12 allied health professionals for every $1, right? That's an industry that's growing leaps and bounds. We need to direct more of our young people to those career opportunities. After I get back from Rockdale County on Monday, I'll be able to give you a lot more information. But Ron Jackson is a good friend of mine, and I'm so proud that he's going to offer us this opportunity, because I think it can fundamentally change and improve the number of how we educate our children and train our children. And it's right in line, Ms. Brixton, with the Common Core college and career readiness curriculum that's going to be put in place in this district. I'll take one more, Michelle.
Well, actually, there's two, but they're related.
You got two more? Okay, all right.
Because
Wait a minute, this lady has the mic,
Oh,
I'm
you
sorry.
may go right ahead.
Well, I know that you're closing up, and I just wanted to make sure that I got a chance to tell you that when you came into office, I know that you said increased communication with parents was something that was a priority for you, and I have seen that, and I just want to thank you for that and say that we've seen other board members come out to our community, and we appreciate that visibility.
I just want to say, you submitted a question. We had a lot that we didn't get to, which is great because we had a great conversation. I will be forwarding these on to Mr. Thurmond so that he can get back to us, and we'll post any answers that he provides on the Tucker Parent Council website. Whether people are here that are engaged, anytime you have that, I kind of want to ask you, is there a way that we can focus legislatively to support the district in two ways? One is to ask for more funding, and maybe this is a state lobbying issue, for state funding to help support those refugees in Clarkston. DeKalb County is carrying the load of the financial burden. And we, to your point, in the country are the ones that we're always, if these children come. Should we be rallying or trying to work with the state? Should we be, to get the state to buy into the fact that this is not just a DeKalb issue, that this is a state issue, and that they should be offering funding for this, or more funding if they're not, if they are.
Absolutely. At the federal and state level, I think that's very important. First, we had to inform ourselves that these students are actually in the district, that we are not the same school district we were 40 years ago. But if you graduated 40 years ago, who knew, right? But it's changed. So part of it is education and information. Talking to your congressional representatives, our U.S. senators, as well as our House delegation. You know what's interesting? Someone told me today, and I got to check it out to make sure, that there are 57 current members of the Georgia General Assembly who graduated from a high school in DeKalb County. Is that right? So we have the potential political portfolio to really make a difference. And we're reaching out, Republican, Democrat. I'll announce Governor Deal will be doing 2 of our graduation speeches this year. Is that cool? I want to be like Gwinnett and get, what, $60 million? No, I'm just kidding. but you know, that's part of, you know, that kind of grated me when I read an article. I don't know whether Ty wrote it or not. I hope not. they were bragging on what an outstanding job they were doing managing the money in Gwinnett County. So if I had $60 million more, I could do a better job too. But, so, you know, lobbying, and let me tell you what else is important. If you all will, and we're in it for a short time, and thank you so much. If you all will share that there have been some positive changes, particularly to SACs and advanced ed. Not that we solved all the problems, we only dealing with the tip of the iceberg. But it's important for us, in order to restore full accreditation to the district, at least in a letter or an acknowledgement, thank you for your letter, Mr. London, to the editor, that we got a board, and hopefully an administration, that at least demonstrated that we're moving in the right direction. That will help us tremendously. And that's all, not any full-fledged endorsement of the next 3 years, just in terms of what is happening and what has happened in the short term.
And I want to ask if there's one more lobbying opportunity for us, if that's what we're calling it. I understand that the reason we went to the middle school model, and going back a few years, is because of the state funding, and that the legislators dictated that, and that's how we find ourselves where we are today. Would it be worth it for us or you to lobby the state or the legislators to make those decisions to allow us some flexibility in considering at least a K-6 model, which would take immediate relief, give immediate relief to the middle schools, and would disperse those children amongst the feeder schools. So it wouldn't burden one elementary school, but it would really provide immediate relief in the middle school area. But of course, we'd have to lobby for funding. But is that? I mean, it doesn't do any good if we support something like that, and if you in fact do not. You see what I'm saying? It has to be something that we would all agree would be.
Okay, well, we can talk about. One of the things I would encourage us to do, and I'm saying us, I have enjoyed. I've learned so much from my listening and learning to. In the fall, began to invite the legislative delegation to your meetings.
They're invited.
I mean, but do it, and not just your meetings, but I would hope that our PTSAs and our parent councils all around the district will take the opportunity to let them know, you know, everybody was involved when we were in the controversy. And typically, once the controversy is down there, the media goes away and people's attention focuses in that direction. What we need to lobby for right now is to help us elevate the quality of the education that we are providing in the district and prove to the legislators that we are involved, north, south, east, and west. And I know you do it, but it's going to be even more critical that you do it this year in this particular legislative session. And hopefully you'll begin like in October before it gets to be a crush in December. But thank y'all so much for letting me come, and thank you for